think we're ready to start, folks. Thank you for rolling up to this session. My name's Richard Bennett. I'm the Product Integrity Manager with Horticulture Australia Limited, and it's my pleasure to chair this session for you. Sponsored, in this case, this session, sponsored by Colourvision Systems. CVS have obviously been a long-standing supporter of what happens at Fresh Connections and elsewhere. Just to outline, this session will be 3 presentations, hopefully 10 plus 10 plus 10, and then we've got about 20 minutes for discussion. A panel session will be here, and then we can get into a little bit more nitty-gritty about the issues that are raised. Basically, I'm going to, draw the bigger picture of dealing with risk and managing incidents. And then Bernard Treacy from Lamana Group will be speaking on an industry perspective, or a major supply chain business's perspective on managing risk in their business. And then Elton Miller will be speaking on a government perspective, particularly associated with what's happened in Queensland in the last 12 months. My name's Richard Bennett. I'm the Product Integrity Manager, as I said. My background is, I'm an agronomist by trade. Have worked for a number of industry organisations, and I manage a portfolio of projects within Horticulture Australia Limited associated with product integrity, food safety, supply chain, etc., as well as training and leadership, based in Shepparton in the Goulburn Valley. All I've got to do is get my presentation now. So what I'm going to cover is, what do we mean by a crisis? It really should be, what do we mean by an incident, because an incident isn't necessarily a crisis. What might cause such an incident, some recent examples, how we actually measure whether this is a crisis or not, and what sort of, how we actually measure the risk to an industry organisation or a business or all of horticulture. The fact is we have a plan, and where we might go to from here. And then, as I said, I'll be introducing the other speakers, and we'll have summary and questions and discussion after that. So, the quick definition: an incident or an issue that may cause material, largely financial, or reputational damage to individuals, businesses, or an industry. So we're talking about things that go wrong, largely that get into the media and give us grief in one form or another. These sort of things generally move through 3 stages at varying speeds, ranging, they start, hopefully we have something that's contained, then they tend to get out of control, and then they become a crisis. Our aim, of course, is to get a crisis and actually get it back to the loop to actually containing the thing. The big questions are, how do we do that, and who does it? And I find in my work, many industries don't actually address, and businesses don't actually address this until it actually happens. Who's actually got a plan in place in their business or industry organisation now to cover an incident which could lead to as I said, a material or reputational crisis for their business? Who actually has a plan? Responsibilities identified, who'll address the media and all the rest of it. So some of you have, and quite a few haven't. And that's pretty much how it is. Certainly in my work, I've been involved with the federal government on developing business continuity plans for the entire food sector, I suppose. And it's amazing how many substantial, even multinational companies don't actually have a plan. So let's just have a look at what might cause a crisis, just to put this into some sort of perspective. There's the usual suspects, and foodborne illness. Who hasn't heard of what's happening in Europe at the moment? Salmonella, E. coli, Hep A are the 3 that come most readily to mind in horticulture. Chemical residue issues, or chemical issues per se. There doesn't actually have to be a residue violation. But it's usually a residue violation, but as I said, it doesn't actually have to be, because sometimes if there is a perceived chemical issue, certain elements of the media are quick to pick it up, and once it's in the media, it really doesn't matter whether it's actual or perceived. We have to defend. sometimes we don't defend, but we have to actually have a plan to actually deal with it. And I said, as an example, the media coverage, endosulfan, just even though it's being phased out, it's still an issue. The macadamia two-headed fish, Noosa River bass issue was back in the media yesterday. This thing started 2 years ago. It's still there, and despite what's transpired. And of course, we've had environmental contamination events. As I said, runoff into the barrier reef. Dust storms gave agriculture and horticulture to some extent bad press. Sadly, I've seen some pretty graphic pictures of the northern Tasmanian coastline. It was as red, 50 miles out to sea as it was on the hinterland, and those sort of things do not do us anything good. There's a whole range of other incidents that have occurred in horticulture. It seems to be an annual thing that Choice loves to come on about, not just them either, about the length of storage of apples and pears. The fact is that you might be eating an apple and pear in December, January that was actually harvested in February or March. They call them birthday apples in the media now. The things have got a damn name. Natural disasters come under the heading of an issue, and we'll hear more about that later. The nursery industry is not spared. There have been fatalities due to Legionella in potting mix, and also last year the nursery industry had to defend a group of Sydney school kids who ate a few flowers they shouldn't have at lunchtime, and caused a little bit of heat in the Sydney media the following day that the Nursery Industry Association addressed. Unfortunately, there have been industry injuries and fatalities on orchards. There was certainly one associated with the office that I ran off Fruit Growers Victoria last year, where there was a fatality on an orchard, and the media immediately confronted the orchardist, and there was no sympathy about it. It's the fact that you have done something wrong until you can prove otherwise. And they went straight to the grower and straight to the industry organisation, and this one caught everyone on the hop. Sabotage is something that I could never believe that we would have an issue with, but as you know, with issues in Bowen recently, with strawberries on the Sunshine Coast, I think probably one of the first ones on my list was a needle found in a Granny Smith apple in a Woolworths store in suburban Melbourne, which cleared the store and called in the police. That was quite a number of years ago now. So these things do happen, and they can also give us grief. Negative health claims. We like to think we've got a really healthy product, but on my list of incidents, allergenic responses. Dare I say it to my colleague from the citrus industry in the front, too much orange juice has actually made the press. So we actually have to be prepared for some pretty unexpected sort of things. As I said, allergic reactions to either the products we use or inputs. We've had issues with latex gloves used in fresh cut salads, causing allergic reactions to consumers that we've had to contend with. Stuff that we never anticipated. But we've got consumers that are all too willing to complain and a media that's all too willing to listen. I recently ran a risk assessment for the processing tomato industry, and in fact one of their things that came up on their risk assessment was compositional issues with the processed product. Whether that is an unintended compositional issue, such as metal fragments or whatever, or the labelling itself not being accurate and forcing them to actually recall a product. And I don't know whether anyone's got any others, but I'm sure there are others. Actually, I was speaking to Bernard last night. Recovery from bushfire. I'd forgotten how many horticultural properties were damaged by bushfires in the last few years. When I look at in my spare time, I keep a list actually of, when the wheels have fallen off, and I guess there's on my list over the last 10 years, there's 78 incidents in which we've had some cause for either response or no response, but in fact it's been on our radar and we've actually had to do something. There's 78 incidents over the last 10 years. There's actually 46 products mentioned in that media coverage, and whether that's Choice and Today Tonight picking up, the dirty dozen, as they call them, products most likely to have chemical residues in the USA, or whether it's bananas, broccoli, kiwi fruit, and other things being mentioned by in the media in an article covering Kevin Rudd's visit to a primary school in the ACT last year and related to the possible allergenic effects of those products. All these things come up. When I look down the list, the worst offenders on that list, if I total them all up, fruit and vegetables general, where you can't differentiate. There's a bit of flack flying and it's going to stick to the category generally. Tomatoes, including processed, is next. Apples, sprouts, strawberries, lettuce, cucumber, oranges, including juice, and macadamia. And the macadamia one is probably unfair because it's been the same issue, largely the same issue, many times over. So, as I said, the list is 46 different products. When I look at the incidents by the actual cause of those incidents, 50% of the incidents that we've addressed have been microbe-based, and salmonella is significantly the largest of those. A third of the incidents we've addressed have been based on pesticide residues, and then there's a whole chunk down the bottom there where there's been negative media coverage or potential issues associated with a range of other issues where we've had to provide input to industry, I suppose, into how to address something that might go wrong. In case you're not convinced, there's the latest one on the seedling sabotage destroying millions of tomato plants, and of course a hydroponic tomato and cucumber crop in Queensland. This one, I got a call from Fazan's at 6:10 on the Thursday night before Good Friday saying we're about to recall 26,460 750 gram packs of Australian almonds because of salmonella. And by 10 o'clock that night we had our 4 key speaking points for the media sorted out, and fortunately over Easter the media was otherwise busy, and this one didn't make it any further than the ads, but that's an example, I suppose, of how it happens. When I talk about stuff that happens or stuff that might happen, chemicals are likely, not definitely, just likely, possibly. It's possible chemical sprays were behind to form two-headed fish at a Sunshine Coast fish hatchery. So you don't even actually need a positive before your news